So Lucy Watts is going to tell us about transition from child to adult. Lucy, over to you. You're going to come over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome.
I have to say that I've known Lucy for a very long time, and she's one of my favorite patients.
Would you like to say that?
And she's done remarkably well from where she was, and I think the most important thing is her ability to move forward, whatever the issues are. She finds a way forward to move forward, and that I think is a fantastic attribute.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Chronic intestinal pseudo-obstruction is a little known and vastly misunderstood condition. I come across something time and time again with people I connect with, and that's the fight for treatment, understanding and support.
Yeah, I don't know. Bear with me, Lucy. Sorry, bear
That's
with
all
me.
right.
Not very good with technical things. Try now.
Hello? No, not good.
Okay. I wonder if that will help. Okay, any luck?
Hello? No, I don't think so.
Is it on? It's gone red at the bottom.
It
It was green.
It was green, wasn't it?
Let's see.
Okay, we're all right for batteries. And we are red.
Hello? That's all right now. It's gone green.
Yeah, but I think what it does is light up a light. I'll be back. You start, and I'll be back.
It's gone green.
Chronic intestinal pseudo-obstruction is a little known and vastly misunderstood condition. I come across something time and time again with people I connect with, and that's the fight for treatment, understanding and support. Unless you have a family member or friend with a condition, you won't have heard of it, and the medical profession outside the experts who diagnose, treat and research the condition don't know or have very little understanding of it, and of the devastating effect it can have on your life. I was 14 when I became disabled due to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, at 15 when my gut started to fail. I had gut problems right from birth, from severe reflux that would stop me breathing, to tears in the bowel, to severe constipation which can never be managed effectively. No one ever joined the dots, and I went on with my life with all the symptoms and difficulties that Ehlers-Danlos bestowed upon me, but also the gastrointestinal problems that plagued me the whole of my life. Things I never told anyone about, I suffered in silence. It wasn't until I was 14 that my EDS was taken seriously, and 15 when my gut problems escalated and someone took notice. However, unfortunately, the gut problems were deemed solely psychological, and despite being able to eat nothing and losing 6 stones in 6 months, I had to prove that my conditions were real to be started on artificial nutrition. After collapsing and with start of kidney failure, I was started with NG feeding, then PEG feeding, and after 14 months started on PEG-J feeding. All of these failed, however, me dropping to under 7 stones in 18 months, which is dangerously underweight for my height. I started seeing Professor Aziz in April 2010, who ran many tests, and together we worked through the drug treatments on offer, to no avail. Finally, I was being listened to, and my conditions understood and investigated. My weight continued to drop though, until I reached that dangerous weight. My gut had failed completely. I was now in intestinal failure. Without the quick actions of Professor Aziz and Dr. Glynn, I would not have been started on TPN, which saved my life and continues to keep me alive to this day. That was May 2011, and after 6 weeks I came home, my mum having been trained to care for my Hickman line and to connect my TPN. No amount of laxatives, stimulants or enemas would get my bowel to work, and my small and large bowels were severely impacted. After numerous pseudo-obstructions, landing me in hospital every time with faecal vomiting and excruciating pain, which were happening on an almost weekly basis, there was concern that my bowel would tear under the pressure one day. This was when an ileostomy was discussed, and my bowel was not moving at all, and the faeces and pressure were building up and up, so there was no other option. It definitely was the way forward, and so in February 2012 I had my ileostomy formed. My bowel was so impacted and floppy that they couldn't even wash my colon out under the anaesthetic, and during the operation they took full thickness biopsies of my bowel, and they struggled to sew the bowel back together, forming a haematoma where the stitches wouldn't hold. Fortunately, this caused no other problems. The pseudo-obstructions didn't stop though. I was in and out of hospital, and though this was already a problem previous to the ileostomy, I was no longer absorbing my medication that went into my PEG, so I started requiring intravenous medications. A year after my ileostomy was formed, I had to have it reformed as the bowel behind the stoma had narrowed, and this refashioning of the stoma lessened the frequency of the pseudo-obstructions. I still frequently get them, but a lot less severe and not as long-lasting as they were. I do have to keep my PEG on continuous draining to prevent me vomiting though. My bladder also failed. In March 2010 I started catheterising into my bladder, and then in September 2013 had a suprapubic catheter put in because my pelvic floor wouldn't let me put a catheter into my bladder, until finally I had my urostomy formed in 2014, whereby a small section of bowel is used to form a tube between the kidneys out onto the surface of the abdomen, where a bag is worn to collect urine. Since I became ill in January 2008, after a childhood full of problems that were never connected or investigated, my condition has progressed rapidly. I don't eat or drink at all as I live with daily pain, bloating and nausea, and antiemetics just about stop me vomiting, providing I don't drink anything and my peg drains freely. I still have a lot of problems with infections, pain, nausea, vomiting and all the other symptoms and problems that my underlying Ehlers-Danlos has caused, but my quality of life is far superior to what it was previous to TPN and my ileostomy. I'm wheelchair bound, though still spend a lot of time in bed, which I find is more limiting than my conditions themselves. Yes, my care is complex, involved, specialised and time consuming, but somehow I manage to fit a lot around my care. My life revolves around my assistance dog in training, Molly, and my charity work. I came on board with Port last year, but I also work with numerous other charities, writing, speaking at events, including Parliament and the Department of Health, appearing in videos and recordings, and even on TV and radio, attending events and campaigning on issues. A lot of my work has focused around the transition period between children's and adult services, and it's this side of my story which I particularly want to share with you. I hope my experiences and the work I do to improve this will benefit the children and young people with chronic intestinal pseudo-obstruction and their families, and all the children using health and social services they pass through the transition period. I started my journey on paediatric wards where the care is open to the child and their family, and the child is kept at the centre of their care and their care more holistic. I liked paediatric services. My mum was still able to make decisions with me and would speak for me at appointments. I was extremely shy. I liked the safety net of paediatrics with the variety of support staff and just the whole attitude towards children and young people. The understanding of my condition in paediatrics and adolescent services left a lot to be desired, but the actual care and the feel of the staff in paediatrics was warm, welcoming, upbeat, and the wards and clinics full of smiles. Imagine my surprise when suddenly, aged 16, I was thrust into adult care with no form of transition. Suddenly I was on wards by myself, my mum only allowed in visiting times. Suddenly I had to make all my decisions for myself without any support, potentially life-changing decisions at that, and had to be cared for solely by nurses, and my mum wasn't able to be there for me all the time. Staff couldn't understand why I wanted my mum there with me, since I was classed as an adult on an adult ward, but regardless of my age and the fact that I was new to adult services, I had some pretty horrific experiences by people not understanding my conditions or the needs of a 16-17-year-old. To put it in perspective, I went from being on a children's ward in one admission with my mum there all the time with me, making decisions with me, a wealth of support staff and a wonderful family-filled environment, to being on an adult ward with 5 dementia patients, suddenly having to make decisions by myself, my mum only allowed in for visiting times, and a completely different attitude and feel to paediatrics. It was hard, I felt so alone. The dementia patients were calling out all the time, shouting out all hours of the day and night and misusing the call bells, meaning many of the times I buzzed, this was ignored. It was horrendous. I was not ready for the world of adult services, having had no support, preparation or easing into the adult services who would take over my care. I had no one there for me apart from my mum, who was travelling up to London from home for visiting time each day, but outside of visiting times I was alone. I wish there had been a transition process, time to get to know the consultants and specialist nurses who would be caring for me, time for them to get to know me, time for things to be explained to me and for someone to be around to support me in the early days. I wish the staff had been briefed that I was a young person and that I had different wants and needs to the adults and elderly patients they are used to, and to support me a little more as I was new to adult services and was very scared, alone, and that I'd gone through a huge change since leading paediatrics. I wish my mum could have been allowed in to support me on ward rounds so she could be there to help me make decisions, especially given the nature of the reason of my admission. I wish that all hospitals had a specialist nurse, social worker or other support worker who could assist young people as they transition into adult services, and also prepare them before moving into adult services, as well as support them for a while after moving into adult services. This would make a huge difference to the young people who are transitioning. It might make it much less scary. I'm fortunate that, after the misunderstandings and poor services the treatment I received, once I found the right doctors, I was able to build a great team who have kept me alive and given me a better quality of life. My treatment is palliative, but it means we've been able to maximise quality of life, and I'm very grateful to my doctors, especially Prof Aziz and Dr Glynn, for thinking outside the box with me. I'm very fortunate to have a good team now. My journey has not been plain sailing, it's been horrendous at times. I've reached deep dark lows, but I've also reached incredible highs, not in spite of, but because of my conditions. I'm fortunate that I'm able to go on and use my experiences to benefit others, but also just to enjoy some quality of life. I would give up my illness in a heartbeat, we all would, but I would have missed the person I have become, the things I've achieved, and the people I've met as a result of my condition.